Good morning, everybody. I'm Mark Halperin with Sean and Dan. Welcome to the morning meeting. Lots to get to. We'll throw ourselves right into it. President Trump today is in Florida, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, addresses in a private session, although I still think it might be opened up. But as of now, a private session with House Republicans who are there for 3 days for a little bit of golf, but mostly to focus on House Republican business with a great emphasis on what they are going to do about issues related to budget, debt, deficit, the debt ceiling, the most complicated and difficult and perhaps most important project for the president and congressional Republicans for the year. And they, as I said, they'll be there till Wednesday. They hear from J.D. Vance tomorrow. Vance today is inspecting storm damage in Virginia, one of his first official public acts. So we'll look at that during the day. 9 o'clock Eastern Time, which is to say now, Pete Hegseth is expected to arrive at the Pentagon for his first day of work there. And
he was killed in
we're looking.
Afghanistan.
There it is. Let's listen.
What I wear on my wrist every single day. It was a troop I served with, a soldier I served with in Guantanamo Bay when I was a platoon leader. He was killed in Afghanistan, not in my unit, but when I was there. It's these guys that we do this for, those that have given the ultimate sacrifice.
Additional troops to be sent to the border soon?
Whatever is needed at the border will be provided, whether that is through state active duty, Title 32 or Title 10, because we are reorienting. This is a shift. This is not the way business has been done in the past. This is the Defense Department will support the defense of the territorial integrity of the United States of America at the southern border, to include reservists, National Guard, and active duty in compliance with the Constitution, the laws of our land, and the directives of the Commander-in-Chief.
The possibility of invoking the Insurrection Act, yes?
Those will be decisions made by the White House. I look forward to conversations about anything we need to do to ensure we're securing our southern border.
Mr. Secretary, are you going to change military training?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to change military training?
Military training will be focused on the readiness of what our troops in the field need to deter our enemies. More rapid fielding, more rapid.
All right, we'll keep watching. Sean, you were 50% right. CNN did take it, but Fox is not.
That's actually, yeah. I actually, I don't know. I'm thrilled that CNN covered it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Fox didn't just because they didn't want to look like they were the only ones.
Yeah. Two more scheduling things. 5:30 p.m. the Senate, which is in, the House is not because the Republicans are retreating, metaphorically. Senate at 5:30 is supposed to vote on Scott Bessent on the floor to be named Treasury Secretary. To me, surprising number of Senate Democrats are voting for a lot of these Trump nominees. We'll maybe talk about that, if not today, this week. And then finally, in Poland today, at this hour, people are assembling. It's the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi death camps, and incredible assemblage of world leaders, heads of state, heads of government, a very senior delegation sent by President Trump of many of his friends and officials in his administration to mark the 80th anniversary. It's significant because it's in the view of many the last big anniversary to commemorate where survivors are still alive and can speak. Very few dignitaries are speaking at the ceremony today to remember the events, but some of those who are survived are there and are getting a lot of attention, understandably. We'll talk about all that, but first I want to talk about the weekend. After an incredible Monday through Friday, lots of activity on the parts of Donald Trump and the Trump administration, the weekend was incredibly intense. And once again, a demonstration of how Donald Trump, dealing with the media, the Democrats, other countries, congressional Republicans, has a very large and visible presence. We talked again last week to Steve Elmendorf, who talked about Donald Trump doing well under the banner of the 3As: action, attention, and authenticity. So, Sean, start with you. What's something that happened this weekend that you think has a lesson for understanding the administration, its policies, its actions going forward?
I'm going to take the obvious, and it's Colombia, but I think because it illustrates what you're getting at more than anything else. This little game that the president of Colombia was playing by not taking planes of his own citizens that we were expelling was a longstanding practice. And suddenly he decided that the type of plane that was being used was objectionable. Okay, fine. So he sends them back. And then what this is where the telling part is. Look at the Truth Social post that Donald Trump put out. It showed to me that he has a complete command and understanding of government and all the tools and levers of the government at his disposal. It wasn't just, I will be doing this and calling him and I'm going to levy tariffs. He went through systematically, agency by agency, and showed that he had a full understanding of the scope of government and what it could do to retaliate. And to me, that is Trump 2.0. That is a guy who's come in, understands what he can do, how to do it, and when to do it. And the Colombians reacted because of that. So to me, that was the one thing where there's a lot over the weekend that he could go to, but it shows that he knows what he's doing. He's got a team around him that knows how to implement them. The level of specificity of those actions enumerated in the Truth was not like it came out of thin air. And that's the difference between this time and 8 years ago.
Dan.
Yeah,
on
I mean,
point.
look, to Sean's point, he was on the golf course. He didn't type that out, right? Somebody handed him the platter of like, these are the things in our arsenal, and he pasted it and hit send, right? I think he continues to do the narrative setting of strength and action very well. But in the big picture, it is the small stuff right now that they can control, right? They are showing action, but the big ticket items are still out on the horizon, and it's still to be determined. How are they going to do when it comes to things like reconciliation, the bigger picture of immigration? A plane with 80 people, it's good, right? It's 80 fewer than we had to start the morning, so to speak, but you're not really putting a bigger dent in it. And at the same time, this weekend, there was a story that the White House is frustrated. They want 1,500, 2,000 people a day, bigger headlines, more numbers. It's harder to do. It's going to bump into, real world issues. So I agree. They're doing the little things well, and they're building momentum. We'll see if it helps them with the bigger picture.
Dan, I do get your point on the numbers. And I think, but I will say, to me at least, one of the biggest sea changes has been if 4 years ago you were told, don't come, but here's what you get when you come, right? The signal was, we actually kind of want you and will reward you for coming in, whether it's 80 or 8. What I think the signal is to folks who want to come into this country illegally is, we will find you and we will get rid of you if you come into this country illegally. And I think that in itself, that level of deterrence is critical.
Well, look, we're going to see. I mean, a couple thousand come a day. So it may be that starts to slow, but we will see. We will see.
The other lesson I think from Colombia is something I was thinking about over the weekend. You look at people who have, or organizations or countries that have, quote unquote, stepped out of line. Joni Ernst on the Hegseth nomination, now Colombia. No one wants to be the singled out person in their category. No one wants to be the member of the Republican Senate who they're going after. No one wants to be the corporation or sector that they're going after. No one wants to be the country that fights Donald Trump and is crushed by tariffs or whatever it is. And I think other countries are going to look at what Colombia did and say, well, do we want to be the ones who cave, or do we even want to get to that level of confrontation, or do we want to avoid that by caving on the front end rather than caving after a little bit of a back and forth? So I think that's massive. I'm just looking here at the picture I see, waiting to see if we're joined by Michael Moynihan, who is in Poland for the 80th anniversary commemoration. So we'll wait and see if Michael's able to join there. Dan, what's something from the weekend that you noticed that you think has meaning going forward?
Yeah, I think, you said that so far no one is stepping out of line. I think it was interesting that McConnell voted no in the Senate on Hegseth, because that's 3. With Collins and Murkowski's penchant for bucking the president. They did it in the first term. That leaves just one person, right? You are right on the razor's edge. And, you had Grassley criticizing the IG firings and the fact that he didn't notify Congress and give reasons. Grassley's been a longtime advocate for IGs. The fact that Cotton criticized stripping the security details for, a fellow former member of Congress in Mike Pompeo. as we've talked about, every day that goes by, you burn down your capital a little bit. And I think that it is a warning that McConnell was willing to go out there. He knew it wasn't going to do anything, but he sent a shot across the bow. There's 3 of us. You can't lose one more.
Well, I thought, by the way, remember when the president was headed to Marine One? I think we took it live, and he said, Mitch, Mitch, Mitch. To me, that was the tell. There was like he didn't try to. He knew that McConnell was going to be a no.
Yeah, but it's a big deal, especially with the reconciliation thing still a mess. And it is a mess. There is no agreement in the House. They have no plan. They can't even agree on what they want to cut. The big picture, there's still a lot to be determined. Can this team make real decisions with the legislature beyond just the show?
Okay. Sean, another example from you of something that happened this weekend that you think has meaning going forward.
I know it might not be the biggest thing, but since I already said one Trump thing, I was continue to be blown away by what a great asset JD Vance is to this team and how he deftly handled Margaret Brennan, CBS, this weekend on the interview shows how helpful he is going to be to the messaging of this administration. So there was a lot of stuff. I mean, Dan mentioned a couple of the other things. So I'm choosing among my favorites, but since I went with Trump once, I'll go with JD. And he continues to impress people.
Dan, are you impressed by JD Vance?
Oh, absolutely. I was impressed on the campaign after the first 2 weeks, of his being selected. He's good. I mean, I think, one of the things that will be interesting, and it kind of goes to what I would, kind of say is another thing, is all this talk about DEI and reforming these agencies, shutting things down immediately, furloughing people or sending them home, turning off websites. At some point, you start bumping into the real world. So if there's a health crisis and the expert on that issue has been sent home because they once made a statement about DEI, you're not going to allow in an Afghanistan, family member who was good to us in Afghanistan and served us honorably against the Taliban. Like, the absolutism of some of this stuff may start to bump into the real world and have impacts to this country. And we'll see, because it's so fast, so broad, just seems to be like anybody with something next to their name, that's it. We'll see how this plays out.
I think that it's going to be interesting to see. And again, some people don't like to talk about 28 because I think it's too soon. It's just a reality. There's going to be like political dinners in Iowa and in New Hampshire. It'll be interesting to see how many of those slots, keynote slots, go to JD Vance. It's also interesting to see in early conversations with political advisors to other people who'd like to run in 28. Some of them are a little concerned about how this is going to work. If JD is just Trump's candidate, it may be not competitive. And of course, we saw in 88. Bush 41 had a huge challenge from lots of heavyweight candidates, a half dozen. He did end up being the nominee, but it wasn't easy. Gore only faced Bill Bradley in 2000, not because Bill Clinton cleared the field for him, but because the Gore people did a good job of clearing the field. If JD is aggressive and Trump anoints him, it's going to be a huge advantage for him, because obviously the Democratic contest is going to be extremely wide open.
Mark, let's put it on the table now. I sort of wonder, does Trump anoint JD because he's been loyal, whatever, or does he still want the competition? Because there's
what I was just about to say. Does he want that? Like,
he doesn't. I mean, I think he enjoys, like, he wants JD, but I think he still wants the
begging.
Yeah,
maybe. I think
otherwise, Mark, doesn't somebody then say, okay, if that lane is closed to me because it's all JD Vance, then, and I don't have a future for, let's say, 12 years, right? You assume Vance would be, I'll take the risk. I'll go try to carve out a new lane that goes a little bit against with the idea that maybe this guy loses some altitude and there's a benefit, because otherwise I'm screwed.
If he's the Trump candidate, there ain't no lane in the Republican Party today.
So no one risks saying, why not roll the dice?
I think some people would run against him, but I don't think they'd be serious people with
Well,
much of a
Dan, I
chance.
mean,
Well, but I mean,
look,
just remember Bill Clinton in 91, like, okay, I'm going to go run in a different lane. Turns out to be a great lane. Like,
yeah, but
who
the
knows?
difference is the difference is that if Trump anoints JD gets access to all of the apparatus, the
get it.
state party, et cetera,
Totally.
the fundraising, and that's mechanically almost impossible to overcome.
Correct.
Unless the army behind you goes somewhere else. But I hear you. It's a long shot. But somebody, if it's not JD, then you keep the possibility that Trump could pick you. So to your point, Sean, everyone's the beggar. Everyone wants dad's approval, the king's approval. But if it really becomes, I'm with, Junior's got it, not Don Jr., but JD Vance, then I would just think somebody says, I'll risk going in a different direction and see if I get lucky.
Someone will, but they won't get lucky. Dan, second example, something that happened this weekend that we haven't talked about that you think has meaning going forward.
The Vegas rally still shows me that Trump, understands really well. Like, when I think about the Democrats, Whitmer, Polis, others, to see them stroll into a casino and kind of have some fun and take the photo ops and go back and forth. Like, there's the retail side of Trump that is so strong, right? I mean, Harris obviously couldn't do it. And I think you don't often see a candidate who just got sworn in 7 days ago going and doing something like that. But he's going to keep doing it, right? He's going to hold rallies. He's going to go wander in. He's still, that is a very powerful tool in his arsenal. I don't
want to get greedy and take 3, but I will say this. Friday night, East Coast time, they called a lid. I think it was at 11:24 p.m. And I think that going forward, the schedule is going to be insane. Like, I was, getting my thoughts together for my show tonight. And I was like going back, I'm like, oh yeah, that was Friday. And this was, it's like the whole World Economic Forum address is like rear view mirror wave.
He hasn't been president for a week.
Yeah.
It's been less than a week, by a few hours. If you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. If you're here on the two-way platform, as always, we love new people. If you've never asked a question before or made a comment, please join us today. Particularly if you're a Democrat. Again, there are a lot of Democrats on here. Please raise your hand and join us. If you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, welcome in. If you want to learn how to be part of the two-way platform directly, be able to ask a question, go to twoway.tv and sign up to receive notifications. Go ahead, Dan, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, Democrats, I'd love you to chime in here about the idea of fighting Trump on everything or picking the battles. I'd love to hear more Democrats and what they think.
I got a great email from a Democrat over the weekend who said she sees a lot of Democrats on here too, and her Democratic friends love two-way, but they don't want to talk because they feel like there's no hymnal. There's no clear thing to say at this point because the party still hasn't settled on what it wants to say about the election, what it wants to say about Trump, etc. And all I'd say to that, I think it's good insight. All I'd say to that is this can be a place where you help lead the way and join, whether you're a professional political person or not. It's an opportunity to start being part of the conversation and maybe influence the elected officials, who many of whom are still struggling about what to say. All right. If you think about the universe of potential challengers to Trump's current rise and run, who are you looking at, Dan, to top him? Is there a Democrat? Is it the Supreme Court, who may surprisingly rule against him? Is it Putin? Who's the person or people you look to say they're going to be the ones who stand up to Trump and cause his first crisis and what is a week in a very strong run so far?
I don't think anyone's going to produce the crisis. I think there will be a crisis and there will be an opportunity for Democrats to step in and lead going forward. So I think that, there's 3 buckets that I have here. Jared Polis, I think, on the libertarian argument of activist government, will have some openings here because Trump is so aggressive here trying to use the federal government to solve problems where traditionally the federal government didn't get involved. That was traditionally a Republican view. I think Gretchen Whitmer's State of the State address about focusing on economics. You saw a little bit this weekend from AOC and Representative Ryan from in the House, this idea of like, okay, Trump really got elected on the economy. Inflation was too high and people did not feel economically secure. A lot of the action we're seeing so far is not in that bucket. Now, it's harder. You don't have as many individual tools to issue executive orders and other things to get the economy going. But I think people who start putting down markers, repeating their messages, it starts to build an authenticity. Like, hey, I've been talking about this for months. And then you need the moment where something happens and you can step forward and say, WTF. So I'm not sure anyone will cause that moment, but I think events will happen that give people opportunities to lead.
Sean.
I think at least right now, politically and domestically, there's nobody that can stand up to him. And then I think the Colombia example over the weekend provides an interesting tale. I think the only people who might be immune from that would be Kim Jong-un, Putin, or Xi, in the sense that they could say, you know, we're going to get into some kind of economic tit for tat, and it wouldn't be as quick of a capitulation as it was for the president of Colombia. So I don't know that right now there's some force out there. I mean, like I said, those three guys, just the size of them and the powers that they have, I think are a little bit more things that could pose a problem for Trump. But I don't think he's like wondering who's going to take him on, or that there's anyone on there who so far shows that they've got the might to do that.
Look, I think his own party in the House is his biggest problem. I mean,
Yeah.
I just keep coming back to that. Amongst all the noise, all the action the last 7 days or 6.5 days here, there's still a complete mess in the House. That is a problem. Like, the clock is ticking.
They're not a complete mess. They have 92% of House Republicans on board for whatever they want to do. So they're a complete mess with 8% of the conference, but that's not a complete
Mark, they
mess.
need 99.5%.
I agree.
Like, so
I
it's a
agree.
mess.
I agree with you that it's his biggest problem, but I'm just saying I just reject the characterization that it's like the whole House conference, because it's really not. It's a handful of people. Dan, if you could wave a wand over one Democrat who's in America alive today, you can't choose FDR, over one Democrat or Truman, and say this person is going to will devote a lot of time to challenging Trump, going on TV, high profile events, a war room, just like be the person who goes after him, but they have to keep their current job. Who would you pick?
I don't know who I would pick right now. I mean, I think that's the problem. There's not, to me, an obvious answer, because the like the Shapiros of the world don't seem to really want to do that. It's not.
But just to be clear, my hypothetical, you're imbuing them a desire to do it. Like, this person's going to be fully staffed, fully available, and they want to do it. They're going to go all out with their skills to be the one. So
John Fetterman, then, because he's authentic and he appears to be comfortable with real people. Like, when I think about the Vegas casino, I could see John Fetterman walking into a casino and, like, I don't know if he smokes, lighting up a cigarette, drinking a beer, and throwing a chip, and just like talking to people. But then he could turn around and go into a law firm in Philadelphia and talk to business. Like, he can traverse the two worlds the way successful candidates can, and he's not a phony. He's not out of his element. And he seems comfortable speaking in English and calling bullshit on both his party and Trump. Like, I remember on Hegseth when he was just like, no. Like, I think it was Hegseth where, like, he was asked about him and he was just like, no, he's totally unqualified. Like, he just spoke in English.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Sean, hold your answer for a second. We've got Michael Moynihan, who's at the ceremony, the 80th anniversary celebration. Yep, in Poland, is just joining us quickly. Michael, thanks for making time. Just tell us what it's like there, what you've seen, and what you expect today.
I mean, it's pretty impressive. We're indoors, but this, if you can see right behind me, is the actual entrance to Birkenau, the second camp in this enormous sprawling complex. But, we just sat down for the survivors that were coming in. Last time they had something like this, there were, I think it's a 200, maybe a little more survivors. Now it's, under 30. I think they had 17 or something. And they just came in and, but so it's pretty intense in that way. But lots of dignitaries, King Charles is here, King of Sweden, et cetera. So it hasn't started yet, but it's been, pretty impressive. And look, it's also a time to be talking about this right after Elon Musk gives a speech to the AfD in Germany, in which he says the Germans have to get over their memory complex. And of course, this is nothing but a monument 80 years later to the liberation of Auschwitz to memory. I was just talking to a guy who said that the group that he was with bought Rudolf Höss's house, not Rudolf Höss, Rudolf Höss was the commandant of Auschwitz. And the house that's recreated in Zone of Interest was actually in private hands, and they just bought it to make a museum out of it. So the issue of memory, which is the only thing I've been thinking about and discussing for the past couple of days, it's pretty interesting that it's coming out of the mouth of Elon Musk at a conference for a far-right party in Germany.
Dan.
So, Michael, what is the mood, or is there talk about the fact that the post-World War II order that was largely successful for the last 80 years is kind of coming apart, and no one kind of knows what's going to come out the other end?
Yeah.
How are people thinking about that? I mean, it's prevented a repeat, and now something new will be here.
Well, it's funny. Somebody said to me the other day, if a Jew could pick a place to be, and they were in Europe, they would probably pick Poland, which is, of course, where all the death camps were, and a little bit into Ukraine. And that is because of a simple reason, and it's not me talking, that there hasn't been a huge immigration issue here. There's not Muslim immigration like you have in Germany and France, et cetera. So that conversation, they're having a huge conversation about immigration here now, because obviously Lukashenko on the border of Belarus is trying to destabilize Europe by sending migrants over. He has said, if you can get a ticket to come to Minsk, we will get you over the border. And that is the conversation now. I mean, after the Ukraine conversation, there was flooded with refugees. That conversation's calmed down considerably since the last time I was in Poland. And now is a big conversation about immigration, because they've very, very tight borders here. And yesterday in the SEM, in the Polish parliament, there was a discussion about cutting off welfare payments to anybody who is not a citizen, or somebody who doesn't have a work permit and is not currently employed. I mean, it's a very, very similar argument that you have to what's happening in America, but with a more global perspective, and saying that, like, we don't want these people coming in and destabilizing the country, because that's the goal. So most of the conversation here in Poland about the post-war order does, of course, have to do with Vladimir Putin. Poland, of course, GDP, the highest spending on military is in this country now. That was not true 5 years ago. So that's an enormous difference. The military has become the focus of a lot of the budget. So,
Sean.
Michael, first, thank you for joining us and bringing this. I was thinking about the context of what's going on today in two American ways. One, in the sense of World War II, that we continue to lose World War II veterans, and we're trying to capture that and to teach these lessons to young people. And also 9/11, that I was thinking about it this morning in the context of what we're remembering over there. And just that fewer and fewer people now, especially folks in the military, were alive on 9/11. And how do we preserve the memory of what happened on that fateful day? How do we make sure that we never forget? And you were talking about the survivors that were coming through. And my understanding is it's now down to, just over a dozen that are there today.
Yeah.
What is being done to preserve their memory, to preserve their understanding of history?
Well, look, I mean, there seems to be.
I'm sorry, their experience for history, not their history, but
Well, look, I mean, it's a very good question, because I mean, there's a certain urgency that you hear in all the speeches we read at dinner last night. October 7th comes up in every speech. I mean, the resurgence of anti-Semitism comes up in every speech. Someone said last night, and I can't remember, the speaker said, we thought anti-Semitism was over. Yeah, Middle East, it happens. Europe, it seems to have been, a little different than it was in the past. I mean, Germany has dealt with its guilt in a pretty interesting and pretty direct way. And we thought it was over. And then, of course, you see this upswing in anti-Semitism in the US and in Europe. The memory stuff here is pretty interesting because Poland Poland has a number of laws about memory, by the way. You cannot actually legally call where we are now. We are at the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp. You cannot call this a Polish concentration camp. It is a German concentration camp in Poland. It is against the law. And this is a law from about 5 or 6 years ago. So the constant conversation about memory, I mean, there's lustration laws in Poland about people who served for the SB, the Communist Secret Police. There's laws about, what information you can put out about them. So the conversations about memory are constant political conversations. It's not a kind of thing, well, it's the anniversary, it's 80 years, so therefore we're talking about it. There is a constant conversation. I was this morning at a planned socialist city that Stalin made in 1951. And to hear people talk about it, it's a pretty remarkable thing in the way they talk about their communist past. And again, codified into laws, but it's constantly present. You see it. Everywhere you go, people say, well, that's a very Soviet building. That's a Soviet era building. And, the old Communist Party headquarters here is now, I think, a Kentucky Fried Chicken, which I thought was the greatest victory of all time. So there's some victories in here, too. Oh, and by the way, the square, the town I was in today, where there used to be a huge Lenin statue, is now called Ronald Reagan Square. So there's a lot of history all the time.
Yeah. Michael, thanks for joining us. If you can come back tonight or tomorrow morning, we'd love to have you back to hear more about your experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. If people want to ask questions about that when we get to your questions, please do. But Sean, just finish up with if you were trying to help out the Democrats. Dan said Fetterman. Who would you anoint as the right Democrat to be the face right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Dan made a strong case for Fetterman. I thought he might mention AOC for the same reasons. She's just a younger face. I have been constantly surprised. I will admit, for the longest time, I put my lot on Pete Buttigieg because I think that he's got, from a resume standpoint, every box that the Democrats want. And I'll be interested to see if he rises up to some degree. And obviously this is not my forte of picking good Democrats, but I don't know that there is anyone. Even with Fetterman, the thing is, I think he's become the Joe Manchin of this cycle. People love him on the right because he says some stuff. I just don't know how long that lasts.
I think the issue is at some point, you can't just criticize. You have to lead the party to victory in a fight, right? So that's the thing for like Fetterman, right? Manchin never did that because he just enjoyed having a good table at a good restaurant and poking the party. If Fetterman can actually, when something happens, steps forward and be with 8 senators behind him or House members and on TV saying we are against this, then I think it's a moment. I agree with AOC. The only reason I didn't say her is her politics are just so left that it's hard to see that capturing the country today, given how much she's defended so many positions that are now highly questionable within the party. But
do you think if Fetterman took a stance, would the party rally? Like, in other words, what I see lacking in him is I think he's a good interview.
Yep.
But I don't see him being the strong leader right now that says, we are going to take the hill, guys, get behind me and let's go. That he's a good interview on Fox, and that's it.
Hillary Clinton used to say it. Are you a show horse or a workhorse? And he has not shown yet that he will be a workhorse, and that nobody has. I mean, right. Nobody wants to step. Hakeem doesn't. Schumer is trying to figure it out. Traditionally, he loved a microphone. But I think the party doesn't know what issues and where to pick the fight. But I will say whoever does it first could really be on to something because the party's desperate. They want
by the way,
somebody.
Dan, to that point, that's why I think that what the events surrounding how the Colombian president handled is so telling. If you're going to come for the fight, you better be ready to fight because Trump squashed him like a bug and eviscerated the man. It was emasculating to see that president retweet Caroline Leavitt last night when she said, we got everything we wanted, right? And so if you're the Democrat, you want to play the domestic version of that. If you're going to stand up, you better have a team ready to go.
Yeah, well, that's why my hypothetical gave him a war room.
I mean, look, the fact too, I noticed the Trump people online watching that thing yesterday. It was the indictment playbook immediately. You're either with the Colombians or with us. It just
Correct.
immediately put the line down, and you saw kind of quiet, right? Because it's like, oh shit, now how do we answer this? The way he did it in the primary with Republicans. You're with us or you're with, the DA or the, AG or whoever. So it's got to be an issue. Look, when Trump zeroed in on immigration and the trade and NAFTA in 2015, people thought he was crazy, but the elites thought he was crazy. But he hit a nerve with people. We have to find issues, but Trump is so street smart, and he keeps his finger on the kind of pulse of culture so well that it's like Bill Clinton. How do you get around somebody that's so attuned to popular thinking?
Hey,
And
Dan,
that's hard.
and I don't mean to go back in history, like it's in Trump years. It's like 18 years ago. But on Friday, as a former chief of staff, how did you think, would you have advised Gavin Newsom to do what he did at the airport, and how do you think he handled it?
Oh, I thought Gavin did the right thing. Look, you need Gavin. If Gavin wants to have a future, he needs Trump. He needs federal aid. He's got to get that, the chorus line of Fox and the whole MAGA to back off a little bit, to go chase a shiny red ball. Look, the fact that Trump at noon was saying, I may get, blow up FEMA and like California's going to have to make all these changes. And then he kind of ends the day by saying, I'm giving you everything you want. I'll be here. What can I do to help? I'll help with permitting. I'll help. Like, he kind of like, okay, if you're Gavin Newsom, you ended the weekend with something good. Now, Trump produced the good, but I think he handled it right. It was not the time to say, my you-know-what's bigger than yours, and let me kind of try to prove it on the tarmac with Air Force One sitting behind you. It just wasn't the place to do it.
My answer for who the Democrats should turn to with a war room was Laura Curran, former Long Island County executive, who was on here raising her hand, but she disappeared. So you won't get to hear her unless she comes back. Laura, please come back, because I want to show everybody I was right that you should be the face of the party. All right, Jordan, come on in. Tell folks where you are who don't know and what's on your mind, and thank you for joining.
Good morning. Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
A couple of things on my mind. First, sort of a comment and then a question.
Jordan, tell folks who don't know where you are, okay?
Yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania, Southeast Pennsylvania, deep in the heart of blue country. So a comment is really around Friday. I was so impressed by the administration and the day that they had. To me, it was probably the best day the Trump administration has ever had and may ever have. They start off by going to North Carolina, having survey the damage, see everything that's going on, and make connections with real people and bring them forward in a press conference and do things like call out insurance companies and just make people feel heard. That was a huge difference from what we've experienced over the last 4 years. And it truly is remarkable and incredible. And then he goes to California and between surveying the damage, I think the Newsom thing was neutral, and it was great for, I think, both of them, really, because they both came out okay. And then he goes and eviscerates Karen Bass and just makes her the face of everything that's wrong with government. And to me, that was a huge win for them. And then the Hegseth vote at the end, I mean, that's what they wanted. They won. I mean, there's no question. Yeah, it didn't go exactly perfectly, but no one's really going to remember. If Hegseth does well, no one really remember the vote count at the end. So just some observations there. I guess the question off of that is around the Hegseth vote. Mark, for a long time, you've been really consistently ahead of the game in terms of understanding how things are going to play out. And you had been talking for a number of weeks about Tillis and whether or not Senator Tillis was going to flop and vote against Hegseth. And you kept bringing it up consistently. And it just gives me a sense of like, you probably knew something. And was that something that was likely to happen? But because President Trump went to North Carolina and had such a spectacular morning there, that there was absolutely no way he was going to be able to vote against Hegseth and go against Trump on that specific day.
Yeah, great question, Jordan. Great summary of Friday. I think that had McConnell not voted no, I think Tillis would have voted no. In other words, I don't think but he didn't want to be the fourth vote. And I continue to believe that if it were a secret ballot, Hegseth wouldn't have gotten 40 votes. And Tillis would have been in that category. But the MAGA people really worked him over hard, including privately on Friday. and made it clear to him that it would end his career if he voted against Hegseth, and he made the decision he did. But I based on everything I know, I think it's quite possible that Hegseth could have gone down with Tillis as the fourth vote, but he faced a lot of pressure and he decided to give the president his pick. Sean.
First of all, Jordan, that was really astute. I thought, like, your point about the timing is something I hadn't really completely thought of, and it's really a good insight that you're bringing to the table here, because I think you're right. That day would be very hard to say, oh, President Trump's doing all this for my state and I'm about to knife him. It's a fascinating insight because I hadn't really thought of it. The letter that Pete put out in response to publicly to Senator Tillis, I think was that concession. Here's everything, just so you know, I want to be clear. And it assuaged, it allowed Tillis to say, I asked these tough questions, I got these responses, and here they are publicly. So you know, I'm not just saying that. So I thought, you know, and anyway, so it was really well done. And I thought that the way that they handled, you know, the swearing in with Pete and his first day, he went over the Pentagon and immediately sent a signal to everyone that, you know, he understood. And then you saw CQ Brown when played that press conference this morning, standing right to his right, chairman of the Joint Staff. I mean, he's coming in saying, I got this. And I think DOD is going to feel the effects of Pete within by noon today.
Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just respectfully, Democrat, you know, Biden and Harris went to North Carolina, met with real people. The criticism was the resource surge was not sufficient enough, that they were not So, as is often the case with Trump, he does the press conference and the theatrics really well. Like, I mean that's not a snarky, backhanded put down. That is a true practitioner of the craft. He's excellent. Where he has historically come up short is the follow-up in delivering, not just like on disaster relief, but like in general, right? The famous Puerto Rico, like shooting the, you know, paper towels, and they're still struggling down there. So for a lot of reasons. So we'll see, you know, how he does. He had a good Friday. He had a great week. But to me, this is like the theatrical versus the practical, is where if I were the Democrats, I would keep my eye focused. Don't get sucked into the theatrical. See if he delivers. And hopefully Jordan, he does. As an American, I hope he does.
Jordan, thank you. Great question and great framing of the week. Thank you so much. All right. My choice to be basically in charge of the Democratic Party, Laura Curran. Laura, welcome in. Thank you for joining. I saw you doing some great stretching, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I work out with you guys, so that's my thing.
Sorry to have interrupted that, but
that's quite all right.
Tell us what's on your mind, and you'll be implicitly proving to everybody that I was right, that you're the best hope the Democratic Party has.
And Laura, where on Long Island are you?
Nassau County. I used to be the Nassau County executive.
Okay.
And
how many constituents did you have in that job, Laura?
About 1.4 million.
Yeah. So
and we had the 12th largest police department in the country. Yeah. Wow. Safest community in America for the last 3 of my 4 years. I just want to put that out there. So Democrats can be pro law enforcement and pro public safety.
AK, a record of governance with a lot of constituents.
Yes. All right. So this is how I think of it. The Democrats are looking for a topic sentence for their essay. The Republicans, Trump, have MAGA, Make America Great Again. Everything kind of falls under that, and it's very logical, and it all flows from that. So I'm not in politics. I'm not running for anything. So I don't have a hymnal. And if I did, I wouldn't care. But what I think a good topic sentence for Democrats to explore right now is Trump is for globalist billionaires like himself and his family, and the Democrats are for you. The meme coin thing, the fact that he made, 40 billion, 20 billion, however billions the weekend before he becomes president is something that can absolutely be exploited. It's been described as a Ponzi scheme. I'm not sure that it is that, but that's how it's been described. The fact that cops who were attacked, the folks that attacked them were let go. If this was any other group of people that did the attacking, it would be completely different. And the inauguration, he had what some called his nerd herd all front and center, all the rich globalist billionaires who have deals all over the world and need government to make more money for themselves and their shareholders. That is something that can absolutely be exploited. But what Democrats do is they have way too many topic sentences. It's better just to have one simple message and then everything flows from that. And as we've seen in this last election, that could be something that has traction.
Laura, let me play devil's advocate. Isn't that pretty much what Hillary Clinton ran against Trump on in 2016?
Yes, but see, that's where personality comes into it. It has to be someone who does not seem entitled, who does not have that baggage of the swamp. And, if you're coming from what some people perceive as the swamp, you can't attack the other person as being a swamp creature. You have to be somewhat of an outsider. And that's the challenge. Who's going to lead that call?
So if you don't accept my draft, who would you say could drive the message you're talking about well?
So I have maybe an irrational girl crush on Gina Raimondo. I think she is someone who has run a government, could do this sort of thing. I like Fetterman. I hear what Dan says about authenticity, and actually authenticity has to be the very first thing, and he's got that. I think AOC has authenticity, but she's got baggage for a lot of moderate Democrats like myself. That's maybe a bridge too far in terms of the whole progressive stuff and decarceration and all of that.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if Raimondo started a 5-minute daily podcast audio commentary on Trump and just drove it. It would be amazing because she would rally a lot of people, but a lot of people. Her problem is the unions just don't like her.
Huh.
I don't know if they'll ever get over that. Dan, comments on everything that Laura said.
Well, I think there's a lot of great stuff there. My little tweak, I wouldn't focus on Trump per se, but the party. But I do think, and you saw a little bit of it this weekend, and it goes back to like the theatrical versus the practical. Trump has not really started to address the core economic issues, the core immigration issues that affect working class people. He just hasn't gone there yet. Part of it is he just can't, right? He can't wave a wand on tax. But if you look at what's being talked about for this reconciliation bill, what they want to cut to pay for tax cuts, what the impact would be of 20 million people coming out of this country. AOC had a great line. I know she was mocked. Put a tariff on Colombia. That's the price of your coffee goes up along with your eggs and your bacon. That type of what are we doing for you, the working class? The problem we have is Kamala Harris was not a great vessel for that. Hillary Clinton wasn't a great vessel. And by the end of his term, Barack Obama was not a great vessel. He was perceived as a kind of rich, urban, elitist. And so who that person is a question, but I think they will emerge, and it's good we don't know them. It'll be a fresh face who isn't tied to all this stuff, who can say with a straight face, pox on both your houses, here's where we go.
Sean.
A couple things. I think the American people right now want results. And so what Trump is showing them illustratively by these, deportations, et cetera, is I'm actually following through on all my promises. I'm getting things done. And again, I hate giving advice to the other side, but I would just say, I would actually follow instead of the people surrounding him. I don't really care whether he's got a bunch of clowns surrounding him, 5 dogs, 2 billionaires. If you're getting things done and you can see the results and the country's getting better, that's what I care about. So focusing on the optics to me works if things aren't going well. So if things tank and you go, that's because he's surrounding himself with billionaires and da-da-da. Okay, fine. It buttresses the point. But right now, I think people will accept a lot if you're getting things done. So if the economy is moving in the right direction, if inflation is going down and we can see a substantial change in that, if deportations continue to happen, and you can say, you know what, the guy's actually getting things done, and the last president, we didn't even know that, we didn't see him. So I think I would say that the policy matters more than anything. And that's where Trump is really crushing it right now, is he's putting a win and a win and a win and a win. And then I have to interject and say, if you want to put all your eggs in the Raimondo basket, come visit Rhode Island, just ranked the worst state again to do business in. It is, she might have impressed people as Commerce Secretary, but she's got a problem with her base because as state treasurer, she pissed off the unions. And then as governor did what every other governor does, which is drive the state further into a bad direction. Anyway, I just, the second that her
Dude, could you not
record,
express some Rhode Island pride?
I have plenty of Rhode Island pride, but not for Raimondo or our current governor, Dan McKee,
All right.
who's equally a disaster.
Laura, thanks for coming on. Could you, before you go, urge Democrats to speak up on this platform, please?
Yeah, you know what? I wasn't going to speak up today, but you made the call, so I answered it. Absolutely, because sometimes when you hear everything from the other side, you want to turn it off. So this is such a valuable resource and a valuable platform for great conversations and also good news, like interesting news. So I would say Democrats, don't be shy. And who cares if you're not wearing makeup? Nobody.
All right, cut. Post it on X.
Exactly.
Go.
Laura, thank you. Please come back regularly. Grateful
Thanks.
to you, and really, really interesting framing. And that's what we're looking for from Democrats. Mr. Brandt, we're suckers for small children, animals, and alliterative names. So welcome in, unmute, tell folks where you are, what's on your mind, please. There you go.
Hi, this is Bill Brandt. I'm in Southlake, Texas, and it's perfect to follow up on the former county executive for Nassau County. I'm the local justice of the peace in this part of my county, which is the most conservative metropolitan county in the state of Texas, or in the country, state of Texas country. I have to follow up on what she said. It's very interesting that Democrats think the answer to problems is words. We need a new topic sentence. I find that it's sad and it's also funny, but with the presumption of grace, we really need to focus on actions. What do you actually believe? What are you actually doing? And for a Democrat, a very nice lady and a competent county executive, from what we know, to say that the issue is language, we need a topic sentence, and the topic sentence is, look at all those millionaires, look at all those globalists. That to me doesn't. American people are fundamentally pragmatic, and I think that's what they voted for the president. And the president is primarily pragmatic, and they want a world that works. We're very interested in, how does this work? Will it work? And if it works, if President Trump can revive the economy, if we can actually get a plus 3% growth rate for 3 or 4 years, then the Democrats can have all the words that they want, because the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So that's a comment on that. Yeah. I did have a
Bill,
question.
Before you do, I'll just say it. I bet Dan was going to say the same thing, but he can speak for himself. I think the point is to highlight the choices, particularly coming up in the budget, to say the policies that they're going to pursue, tax cuts for the wealthy, cutting domestic discretionary spending, are a product of a mindset that is about being globalist billionaires. So I think you're right.
When you're out of power, all you have is your words, right? So Trump, for the last 4 years, talked about how awful Joe Biden was. Couldn't do anything, right? Now he's in power. To your point, strong and wrong beats weak and right every time.
Right. But I would disagree. I think if a Democrat had a list to say, here are 3 policies that I'd pursue, that Donald Trump should be pursuing, that would be, to Bill's point. I mean, you got to have some specifics. You can't just say,
sure. 100%. But all you can do is propose right now. That's it.
The possible counter to any verbal gymnastics by a competent politician on the left would be, you guys were in power, and in the first week, Trump started deporting criminal 100%. Illegal aliens. Yeah. And so the words have to be combined with some credibility and trust. Yeah. And absolutely. Right now the trust factor is very low. I got off topic. I wanted to ask a question to the panel. Please do. And that question is, did y'all read John Yu's article in the New York Post? I believe it was yesterday or Saturday. It was about using the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department to go after state officials who have prosecuted people based on race or declined to prosecute people based on race. And it particularly brought up the Daniel Penny affair.
Mhm. I
Any
read it. Sean,
any
whether you
thoughts
read
on
it,
that?
Sean,
I
whether
have
you
not
read it
read
or
it, no.
not. Okay, but how about just that? I'll broaden it out a little bit. They're doing a lot of stuff at Justice even before they confirm the Attorney General nominee to reorient, clearly trying to force out career prosecutors by making their lives uncomfortable, and to reorient the Justice Department towards doing things like prosecuting local officials or on a range of things. The one Bill mentioned, but also on failure to enforce the law in other ways or not live up to the ideological desires of the Trump administration. So, Sean, how about more generally?
I would just say that I think to the broader point, in my opinion, is you saw this with President Trump's or the leaked executive order already today about DOD and COVID, reinstating people in the military who had been forced out from COVID because they refused to get the vaccine. I will just say that, like, I think broadly speaking, you're going to be seeing a lot of righting wrongs across things. So if people were prosecuted for something, they're going to try to undo that. If they were forced out of the military for not taking a vaccine, they're going to right that wrong. But I think that's going to be a broad theme that emerges over the next few months.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, on the Daniel Penny, on the specifics of that, I have not read it, so I don't want to get too far out over my skis. But I think this goes to, Bill, what you said and kind of what Sean said, which is it is action. It is moving a bureaucracy and trying to reorient toward points that Trump largely ran on, in which his supporters want to see done. I would go back to where it's going to actually help people versus kind of more of the like think tank Project 2025 world, which runs a real risk that you take agencies that are effective and largely do good work, may not be perfect, and when the bell rings for them to spring into action, they can't because they've been blown up. It's going to be a problem. And that's the line for Trump to walk: reforming and still being effective versus just blowing up because you don't like what they did.
Bill,
But the
there's one
difference,
other
Dan, I think, and this is why I said what I said at the beginning with respect to Colombia. Last time, the first week we put out that travel order, and I remember literally looking and talking to people and saying, okay, so who signed off on this and has it been socialized and da da da. They are much more, when they do these actions this time, they have, vetted them. They've run the traps on them. And that's why they're effective and there's so little blowback, because people are kind of going, all right, I may not like it, but that passes mustard. And so I think that how they're going through these motions is so much better and more coordinated and executed.
Totally.
Bill,
Yeah.
I just say Donald Trump's adherence to the principles and spirit of the 10th Amendment is episodic. To use the Justice Department to start to interfere in local and state prosecutions, to me, that's a clear violation of the spirit of the 10th Amendment. I understand there's great frustration in conservative circles and MAGA circles to say, look at all the ways the Justice Department has been used by liberals and including career prosecutors, to go after local officials, like civil rights investigations, et cetera. But to then flip it on its head and say we're going to use federal power to go after, I think it's a questionable action.
John, you made that point in his introduction to the article. So, and I'm not advocating.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I thought it was an interesting take.
It is interesting. Bill, you got a big old, does your job come with a big old badge?
No, I mean, law enforcement officers have badges, and I'm a judge, so I don't have a badge.
That looks like a robe over his shoulder.
I'm in my office. I've got some pre-trials today, but if I was in my home office, I would have a really cool flag right behind me with all my coins. I'm a retired military guy, and I was in the Pentagon on 9/11 and subsequently deployed as a commander. Sean, I sent you a LinkedIn message. I don't know if you ever get those.
Well, it's been a little while since I've been on LinkedIn, but I will. If you go to my website, there's a thing that says it's just that there's a contact button. I'll definitely respond to that. I will make a note and
I'll go to
my
your
LinkedIn
I'll
password.
go to your
that.
website. Yeah, I'll go to your website. I love this platform. And Dan, you're the kind of Democrat that smart Republican candidates want to debate, because you actually can, I've said for 25 years, when they're calling you a racist, they've lost the argument, because we're just people trying to do jobs, and that's what they get to real fast. And that means they haven't thought things through and they don't have an argument. And I really appreciate you, Dan, because I'm one of those crazy Republicans that think our country actually needs two American political parties that are both trying to do proper things for the American people and follow the Constitution. And I don't think, my opinion is, we haven't had that in, well, I won't go back too far. I'm pretty old.
Bill, thank you for
Bill.
joining. Very grateful to you, and
Your
for
Honor.
your kind words. And
That's right.
Your Honor, just so you know, the best way to reach Sean is by sending a message on Friendster. That's how that's
There
where
are
he's most,
so many
it's where
media
he's
platforms.
it's where he's
know.
most
There-
up to date. You never
Okay.
let go. He's also got an AOL account.
All right.
Thank you very much for joining. I
Well,
appreciate it.
Hey,
All
Mark,
right, yeah.
we're out of time, but can I just make
Yeah.
one quick point before, because
Yes, sir.
we talked a lot about the Kennedy confirmationists this week for HHS. We've talked a lot about the outside groups and concerns about pro-life stuff. I will tell you, I think Donald Trump on Friday really reassured the pro-life community by not only his speech, but his actions, getting Mexico City policy
Yep.
back in. He is going to continue to be a champion for the unborn. And so part of the reason that you're not going to see the pushback is I think people recognize that he has been strong and will continue to be strong on this issue.
Yep. A lot of steps. Some promised during the campaign, and some, like a lot of this stuff, rhymes with what he promised, but new stuff that wasn't specifically touted. Thank you all for watching. We didn't get to a bunch of topics. John, my favorite doctor in Tennessee, asked about in the chat about this Chinese AI, and we got to talk about that this week. We will. It's a huge story about China and technology. So we'll talk about that. Also, as Sean suggested, we've got confirmation hearings this week. Kennedy and Gabbard, and one other. What's the other one?
And the
that's coming up?
DNC chair on Saturday. Come on,
DNC
get
chair,
excited.
but what's the other? Who's the third nominee whose confirmation hearing starts on Thursday? Can't remember.
Kash Patel.
Cash Patel, thank you. So we'll talk about all that this week. Tonight, I'll be on at 6 o'clock. The three of us will be back tomorrow at 9. This Sunday, coming Sunday, we're doing our live event in DC. There's like 2 VIP tickets left. It's otherwise sold out. So I'm not trying to get you all to buy tickets anymore, because it'll sell out. And thank you for those who bought tickets, and we look forward to seeing you. Again, I'll see you tonight at 6 on Two-Way Tonight, and the three of us will be back tomorrow morning for the morning meeting. Grateful to everybody. Grateful to Mike Moynihan for joining us from Poland, and all the people who asked great questions, and the next chair of the DNC or presidential candidate, Laura Curran. Especially thanks to Laura. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.